Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Gabriel Pages. I'm like a hair taller than the last. There we go. So on September 1st of last year, 2018, my Dodge Grand Caravan caught on fire in the parking lot of a Trader Joe's in Connecticut. I was just finished doing groceries with my 4-year-old daughter, and I was feeling pretty great because when you're shopping for your family, any trip to Trader Joe's is a slam dunk. You can't beat the price points. So I buckle my daughter in, load the minivan, and I get behind the wheel. I go to turn the ignition, and the car doesn't start, but this isn't a surprise because a couple of weeks back, the battery started going, and I kept on recharging the battery with my other car, and I knew it usually took 2 or 3 turns of the ignition to get the engine going. So I go again, turn the ignition, but now I hear a pop, and I thought, that's new. And within seconds, smoke starts to seep out from underneath the hood. And immediately that smoke turns thick and black, and then it's like flames. So I'm sitting behind the wheel of my car, and it is on fire. I took that as a clear indication that it was time to get out of the car. So I unbuckle, open the door, run around the front of the vehicle, get my daughter out, and get as far away from the car as possible because my car's on fire and it's going to blow up. Because like the movies, if a car's on fire, it's going to blow up. Like that's just the rule. Only my car doesn't blow up. It burns intensely for about 5 minutes before the fire department arrives and puts the fire out. And as I'm standing there mourning the loss of my beautifully curated groceries and watching the amazing work that the fires do, it's selfless and amazing, I can't help but think that on a metaphysical level, I might have caused this fire. Because when I was 6 years old, I survived an apartment fire that took the lives of my father and my little brother. I was the oldest of 3 boys, and my father was an orchestra conductor, but he loved getting his hands filthy fixing and working on cars, right? So that afternoon, my mother, who's a classical singer, had to go to a rehearsal, and she took the middle brother with her, and I was sitting on my bed in my bedroom, just holding and playing with a toy. I heard my father come back into the apartment from working on a car, and I knew my little brother was somewhere near the front door. And then I heard a sound that's really difficult to describe, but I've settled on an example that comes close. If you can imagine the express train or a subway that speeds past your platform as you're waiting for the local. Very loud and very sudden. Only it's happening down the hall in your apartment. That's what combustion sounds like, up close and big. As I start making my way up to the doorway to see what the sound was, time starts to slow down. And when I get to the doorway and look down the hallway and I see what's happening, time freezes completely. Or at least, I froze. My 6-year-old mind was facing something so incomprehensible that it froze. And then I heard a voice, and the voice said, "Go." and I knew exactly what to do. So I went into my parents' bedroom, which the fire hadn't reached, and I went out into the balcony. And I started asking and calling for help. Within minutes, the neighborhood people found the ladder tall enough to reach the balcony. We were on the second floor, and they pulled me out. I learned later that my father had unknowingly brought in combustible fumes into the apartment from working on a car, and that the fumes were ignited by the pilot light in the oven. How could my father let his passion for fixing cars endanger the family like this, right? How could he be so careless? My father and my little brother didn't make it, but I made it. And not only did I make it, I was told that it was a miracle. I had taken no smoke in my lungs. I didn't suffer any burns anywhere. I was incredibly lucky. But being this lucky comes with a price, because not having a physical reminder of the accident makes it very easy to forget or avoid what happened and keep the trauma compartmentalized. And that's a problem. I don't need therapy. I'm fine just dealing with this by myself. It's no one else's business anyway. That's what I used to tell myself for like over 20 years. I'd have the occasional, emotional breakdown, but I handled it myself. I was fine. And then something changed. I had a son, and I became a father. And deep down in the sub-basement level of my mind, I assumed the father figure role, and a role that would lead to a young accidental death, right? I know it may sound strange, but this was the story that I experienced as a 6-year-old. And at that age, our brains are wired to adopt and accept the behaviors, patterns, ideas, experiences of our caregivers. So our parents become the blueprint of our future selves. And if you throw genes into the mix, forget it. We don't stand a chance. So I had to live with this growing anxiety on top of the emotional breakdowns, that my time was coming and I would pass on this legacy now to my children, right? And as the years went on, I started to fear that this anxiety would lead to the inevitable, right? But by that time, I was really good at compartmentalizing all my shit, so no one knew. Except that those mental compartments aren't built to last. They're designed to separate the trauma from the moment so that we may swim to shore and not drown, drive to the ER and not bleed to death, or escape the burning building. So one afternoon, one of the compartments I was using to stuff all that psycho-emotional baggage in burst open, and I broke down and I told my wife everything. She listened and held me lovingly and told me exactly what I needed to hear. That I was my own man, that it's okay to feel this way, and that I would be okay. Expressing my deepest fear to the closest person in my life was incredible. I immediately felt lighter, at ease, and empowered. I had control of this thing now. I had the confidence to see my fear for what it was, irrational and unreal. And then the next day, I went to Trader Joe's, and my car caught on fire. So once the fire was put out, I got close to the car because I wanted to take a look at what the damage was. The hood and most of the engine had disintegrated, for lack of a better word. Windows blown out, the interior cabin, dashboard, steering wheel, car seats had melted, like G.I. Joe in the microwave melted. Crazy. The fire captain told me that the dead battery was probably the cause of the fire, and that car fires take up 1/3 of all reported fires, which is a crazy statistic. Car fires are so common, it's amazing that the auto industry hasn't turned spontaneous combustion into a feature. But to me, this wasn't another kind of run-of-the-mill car engine fire. This was my unreal, illogical fear confronting me in a very real way. It was almost as if I needed to go through the steps of choosing not to die in a fire, to finally convince myself that my destiny was my own. It was as if, immersion therapy provided by the universe, because I was too chicken shit to go to therapy myself. I know that last explanation is a bit of a stretch, because the facts are that had I just changed the dying car battery in the first place, none of it would have happened. How could I let my avoidance of fixing my car endanger my family? How could I be so careless? I don't know if the universe has invested interest in my personal development or not. It'd be nice. But the experience taught me 3 things for sure. The first, Trader Joe's will replace your groceries free of charge. If your car melts in the parking lot. 2, cars aren't supposed to spontaneously combust. Bad battery or good battery. And there's no better reason to buy an electric car. Climate change comes close. And the third is that if you don't confront your trauma directly, in some way, shape, or form, it will confront you. Thanks.